This meeting is being recorded.
So welcome back to another Impact Sessions podcast with me, Nick Bramley. I've got another great guest for us today. I've got Derren Gittins, who's the managing director of a company called Verplas. All will be revealed about what Verplas are all about shortly. And I've entitled this podcast, Okay, Throw Something Else at Me, Why Don't You? Now, again, that'll become clear as we explore the conversation with Derren. It's been an interesting time, to say the least. But to explain more about Okay, Throw Something Else at Me, Why Don't You? Welcome to the podcast, Derren.
Good afternoon, Nick. How are you doing? You well?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good. Yeah, great to have you on. We've worked a little bit together, and I've seen your business develop and evolve under your management over the last couple of years. We'll explain where that started from. But I was keen to get you on and talk about some of the things that you've done that are really impressive. So not building you up too much, but let's see what that might look like to the audience, shall we?
Okay.
Excellent. So I always say to my guests, first of all, tell us a little bit about your business. So tell us a bit about Verplas. What do you do? Where you're based? Who are your customers? That kind of stuff, really.
Okay. So the business is Verplas Limited, based down in Verwood in Bournemouth. About 100 employees, 12 million turnover, and effectively it's a family-owned business originated in 1986 that was acquired by Intertrade in 2014 as obviously part of the Intertrade group of 200 companies across the globe.
Okay, and what's your product range then, Derren?
So we manufacture extruded plastic ducting, extruded components for ventilation industry predominantly, and then we do some specialized extruding for caravans or trailers or that sort of thing. So anything to do with extrusion or plastic molding. Okay,
so we'll talk about some of the challenges of that, I guess, around COVID, supply chains, all those kind of areas, I would guess, as we go through. But let's talk about your sort of background. I think from what I understand, you were involved in a successful business sale in early 2020, and I assume you took a little bit of time off from business at that time, but we all know what happened in March 2020, and it wasn't until October of that year that you took on the role of MD at Verplas. Was the break longer than you anticipated at first, and what attracted you to Verplas when you got to October?
Okay, yeah, so I'd worked for quite a big business before that was really struggling. It was about 150 million pound turnover. The bit I was looking after was 40 million pounds worth of glass. Unfortunately, managed to sell the business out in December of 2019 before it probably went into administration, which was a really big feat. So yeah, when I came into 2020, I was looking forward to maybe 3 or 4 months off before starting a new assignment. Obviously, the job market had changed massively. COVID had kicked in, and the sun was shining, and that kind of all came together for me to have a bit of time off. Fortunately, I was okay with a few months off, but October soon came round. But really, for me, it was finding the right business, and the right business for me was a growing, forward-looking group of companies with future development that believed in culture change in the people. So that was the criteria, and that was the biggest thing that attracted me. When I came to see Verplas, you could see there was a business that was crying out for a bit of love, shall we say. It didn't feel very loved, the employees didn't.
Okay, well, we'll explore that. One of the reasons I've got you on is I think, what I've seen from a distance is some of the impact that you've made around culture and, like you say, loving the business and the staff development, but also putting the customer experience at the heart of what you were doing and what you do now. But I guess, it seems to remember, the first part of lockdown, the sun was shining for a long time, wasn't it? So young family and things, you got opportunity to spend some time with the family?
Yes, it was, great to be at home, see more of the family. I've got a 14-year-old daughter. I did lots of building projects, including a log cabin at the top of the garden, which I'm sure most people do. So yeah, it was good to have some time off and gained a little bit of weight during that time, for sure.
But you were ready in October to come back then, yeah?
Ready in October to come back, yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Am I right in thinking that you live in the Midlands? For those who are listening internationally, you're right in the middle of the UK, and Verplas is based on the south coast. What's the distance between where you live and where the business is based?
It's about 200 miles. On a Sunday evening when I travel down, it's about 3 hours. If I try and travel during the week to get back, maybe a Thursday or maybe a Friday, can be over 4 to 5 hours. So yeah, there is a bit of a distance,
Mm.
and although it's not ideal being away, it's something. Working for Pilkington at one stage, I was looking after 25 sites for engineering across the UK. So traveling has always been something I've been very used to, really. But it's had to be the right business to travel and live. I live away 4 nights a week down in Bournemouth.
I was going to ask you what the sort of balance was between the sort of working from a distance, typical working week, remote management, remote leadership. It's pretty hands-on still, is it? Despite all the challenges that we've had with social distancing, working from home, directives, that kind of. You've been in the office more than not. Then
I've been in since starting October. I've not been out of the office at all, COVID related, because we've kind of worked within the offices. We've had separated meetings. We have a morning meeting every day, yet we still do it via Teams, which is quite amusing, but it still seems to work. I'm at least in the office 4 days a week, sometimes 5. But no, you find a way of working around. And I think when you're new into the business, just walking around the shop floor, even socially distance, is very, very important. I make sure I go and see the night shift at least once or twice a week. So it's very key to be there. So yeah, the COVID restrictions are much better now, of course. But during that time, just walking around, even in a bubble, was better than not being present.
Yeah, I can imagine, particularly as it was a business that we're going to explore in a minute, probably needed a bit of TLC, and you had some immediate sort of plans. It was functioning okay, but I think you had some early ambitions to do something with it, and you can't do that very easily from 200 miles away, and probably not having met all your staff at that stage if you were just sat in Nottingham or up towards the Midlands, I guess.
No, absolutely. And some of the challenges we had, rolling out culture change program, it has to be done face to face, and you can do it with a maximum of 10 groups. So we found a place within the factory, spaced all the chairs out, huge distance, PA'd it up to make sure people could hear, but we could only do 10 at a time. And bearing in mind there's 100 employees, you've got to do 10 sessions. They work around the clock, Monday to Friday, so that was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
And even the monthly brief that I brief all employees about the key issues, I do it on a video, put it on YouTube and send a link out to employees. So we've been trying to find, as I'm sure you understand, many ways of communicating in a more difficult time. But it's a good challenge to have, really.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you could have easily sort of said, "Well, we can't make it work, and we'll do whatever." But I think what you've done is you've looked at it and said, "I've got some immediate ambitions and some early changes." Was that based around communication, or was it based around the customer? What was your initial priority, I guess, when getting into the role, into the business?
Well, I mean, I'd worked for Pilkington for many years, Pilkington Glass, and we've been through a culture change program around 2010 to 2016, which was phenomenally successful, both from a business performance and an individual and a personal point of view. And I knew that the next business I went into had to be about improving people's lives. I'm not at an age in my life where it's just about the money. It is making a difference. So the first thing I did when I came into the business was to do a diagnostic session using a third party company I've used in the past at Pilkington, very good on culture change. They did the diagnostics in the November of 2020. I came in the October, and it was quite damning. I mean, if you're going to want to know people's opinion, you ask them. If you don't want to know people's opinion, don't ask them, but don't believe you can improve the business. And it came back that the organisation was very, very unloved. I mean, I won't go into the finer details of what was said, but basically the people that did it said that in the 35 years of doing these diagnostics, it was the worst results ever. However, there was a core of, the core of the people was still this kind of never give up kind of fight. So you had this kind of mismatch of people very, very, very disgruntled and very upset and treated badly, but fighting like mad to say we love this business and we want it to succeed. So what you really needed to do is to try and find out what you needed to do. And communication was poor. There was a culture of blaming. People kept the head down. People didn't, speak the mind. And what we've tried to do over the last 15 months is allow a culture where people can speak their mind and they can, open up and what have you. So that was the starting point with regards to the employees.
Well,
we've done again a survey in 2021, and it was much improved, but still lots to do, really.
Yeah, but your starting point was quite low, so you're not going to improve everything in one go. And I think it's quite nice to know what the starting point is very early, because you're not under any illusions then, are you?
No, absolutely. I mean, I talking to the people, I mean, I would say that if you take culture at 0 with no culture to 100% being your fantastic culture, I think we've probably gone about halfway, but we didn't start at 0. We probably started at, I said -30, we've gone to 20%. The people, a guy called Will Eldon, who was supporting us with this, said actually you've probably gone from -60% to +20. So we've come an awful long way. And if you speak to people, we've come a long way, but we're still fairly early in the journey because where you've come from. And that's important to recognize the improvement, but recognize you've still got a long way to go. I mean, culture's not about telling everybody they're happy. Culture's about making sure that people feel they're in an environment where they're valued and respected, and then therefore can be in a happiest environment.
But what I would say is, and you know this as much as anybody, culture takes time as well, doesn't it? It's not an instant, not a quick fix, not a quick fix at all. So listen, I've had the pleasure of having a couple of your, well, more than a couple of your team on various things that we've done through the Intertrade family over the last couple of years. And I've noticed, even as, a workshop host or a webinar host, the change in positivity. So it clearly is outwardly facing as well, representing the business in a slightly different way, a more positive way, a more upbeat way. And you've got some great staff, the ones I've met, and I think it's probably a good starting point that you've got this disenfranchised staff, but they still want to work for a lovely business. And so you've probably had the best of both worlds. Starting point, at least I know it's not great, but everyone's in it and we're up for the challenge. So not a bad starting place. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think what was key really was that in the past, the senior management team was changing so frequently. I mean, I think there's 24 senior managers in the previous 6 years. I mean, that's not a good sign. And the people that were below the senior management team were picking all the pieces up, and some senior manager would come in, smash it all to bits, and then they'd go or leave or we're fired or whatever. And it's left with the team below. And actually, that was the wrong mentality. So what I've developed is the team below to become the senior team with lots of training, lots of development. You've supported in that, and so there's a real ownership now, and that's really, really important that we haven't just didn't keep bringing in new people. The people are great here. They just weren't told they were great. They weren't recognized as being great. They were absolutely fantastic because they were so good at running the business that the clowns and the senior management team that was destroying the business were not good enough to destroy it because the people below were so good in protecting it.
Wow.
I think that was the key, really. So yes, we've now got a very clear vision and values and strategy. We've got a 2-year plan. We've got targets that people buy into. So there's a lot of clarity now, which I think helps massively. And even in the 12 months, we've seen massive improvements in lots of areas. So
I think it sounds like they had a life expectancy of a Premier League football manager, some of those teams, and some of the people, and constant chopping and changing gets you relegated, doesn't it, usually? So it's probably a good thing with a bit of stability. Interestingly, in terms of that culture and vision, that helps towards understanding everyone's pulling in the same direction, all that kind of stuff. I want to explore something that I've definitely seen around your focus on the customer experience. And you've gone through investors in customers, is that right? Through the process, so you're not shy at getting stuck into stuff, are you? In terms of, we'll take on a culture change, we'll take on investors in customers, we'll take on big programs and things. You've improved the CRM system, increased training, focus on customers. Why was it the customers and not just sales that you focused on from an early stage down?
Yeah, I mean, I think from experience, we seem to have these measures like on time in full measures or employees. So we try and convince themselves that's the voice of the customer, voice of the employee, and it's not the reality. It's measures that we use to measure our own internal performance, not what the reality by the customer. So again, you need to get on your big boy pants really, and ask the customers. And again, what you get back can be quite difficult. And often, and I've sort of said this, that the reality is not important, the perception is important. So if you believe you're servicing the customer really, really well, and you're bending over backwards and doing stuff, but they don't think you're doing a good job, then the perception is the only thing that matters. And actually going to see the customers and asking them was a hugely beneficial part. And they said, no one's ever asked us before, no one's got, been interested in what we needed. So although the IIC survey meant that we was awarded a bronze award, which is good. There's bronze, silver, and gold. So we got bronze on the first attempt.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, we love you very much and we hate you very much, and everything between. So yeah, lots to work on. And just your point on the amount of change, we needed to get this business robust because it wasn't robust. The feedback from the last diagnostics was, come on, boss, I think we're changing things a little bit too quick, and let's make sure we complete things. And this year 2022 is more of stabilization.
So it's a sort of looking at finishing the project and looking at embedding behavior, embedding process, and that kind of thing. Yeah, okay. What advice would you give somebody listening or watching this podcast about their own focus on that customer experience? Because it's quite a dangerous place, isn't it, if you're not big boy pants, as you called them, to normally you hear stuff that is not comfortable. If you're doing it for a reason, you're doing it to find out that we're not really that great. And how would you advise someone listening to this to put the big boy pants on? What would you say to them?
Well, I think the issue you have is that salespeople build a very good rapport, and rightly so, with the supplier or customer. So when they go and see them, when our salesperson goes to see one of our customers, often the conversation is everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. Can I do anything else? No, it's fine. And it tends to be about, not the donut run, that sounds a bit harsh, but also making sure it's just a kind of, is everything okay? The good thing about the IIC survey, Investors in Customers survey, it's anonymous. So people will give real feedback. So if you ask me, what do I think of you? I'm going to say you're a lovely guy. If you've got anonymous feedback, you might then say, well, these are areas that could be improved. So that was really interesting. And the other thing we did was to look at we did a product matrix, which we stole entirely from you, from one of your courses, and effectively listed the products that people buy by the number of customers. And we realized there was massive gaps throughout. And so when we started asking the customers, why did you not buy those products, they didn't know that we sold those products, which is a terrible sin.
Well,
so
I'm going to stop you there. In my world, I'm absolutely passionate about removing the phrase "I didn't know you did that," because it happens so many times. You and your team probably feel like you've told them that you got this product, but they see you as a supplier of product A and they've never associated with B, C, or D. And doing that product and customer matrix is a very easy, I call it fag packet prospecting, really. You look at it and go, well, why are they not buying that? That always goes with that. Why are we not? And it's a good win, isn't it, for you? But it's actually good for the customer as well, because it makes it easy for the customer ordering from one trusted supplier like yourselves anyway. So it makes sense to do that, I guess.
No, absolutely. I mean, we was looking at how we grow the business with new customers, which obviously is always a challenge to get new business, and then the competitors are going to kind of want to kick back against that.
Yeah.
And when we look to the amount of business, we've got millions and millions of pounds worth of potential business with our current customers. So why not love them to death, do a really good job, expand the product range, and focus on servicing those? Because I think most companies just scatter to more and more and more customers, and what you're doing is spreading yourself thinner and thinner and thinner. What we're trying to do is to focus more onto less customers, more of the product category or the customer category that we need, and love them to death. That's what we're trying to do.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, because the thinner you spread yourself, the less management you can give them anyway, and the less love you can give them, can't you? So otherwise you end up resourcing it, massively with internal staff and internal account managers, and no business wants to throw all that resource at it. So I'm going to go back a step to culture. You've mentioned it a couple of times. how would you define the culture that you're trying to, and to a certain extent succeeding already in implementing at Verplas? What would be the headline keywords or phrases that you want your business to be described as, once it's embedded and once you've gone from minus 60 to 20 to whatever, what are the key phrases or words you'd love to be associated with, Derren?
Well, I mean, we have a vision as a lot, DB, and it talks about being market leader, innovation, excellent customer service, which is not unusual, but we underpin those with lots of behaviours of how we're going to treat our customers and treat the employees. And part of the vision is through an unstoppable team. But if you create an unstoppable team on site, then what can you not solve? What problem is going to be too big for you? And customer in everything we do is kind of core to the business. So it's really about engaging and empowering the people to get on and do the job at all levels in the business, that they can really expand and grow and use the skills. Where at the moment we feel that they're kind of pushed down, told what to do, and they've got no wiggle room. We've taken the constraints off. So unstoppable team would be the kind of biggest phrase for me. That's
a great headline, and to be fair, it does allow people the opportunity to challenge and say, well, why do we do this? And I've got a good idea for that. And one of the side issues I always find with organizations like yourself that are going through what I call really positive measures, investing in customers, culture change programs, genuinely investing in training and development, is I'm assuming that things like your staff absence have dropped off, people taking sickies because they weren't really engaged with the business and all that kind of thing. So there's an upside commercially and operationally, isn't there? Has that been a factor? Has that happened?
Massively. I mean, we've got our Q1 budget meeting or board meeting next month, and we're putting together some of the key factors, and one of the team raised that our absenteeism and sickness level has kind of dropped off the end of the cliff. And if you look at that, the turnover of staff 3 years ago was pretty eye-watering, and now the turnover of the staff is tiny. And if you look at the individuals, it's probably people that think I like being Mickey taken, I like being toxic, I'm not going to fit in this new organization, and they vote with their feet. But one or two in the last few months where it was almost daily at 3 years ago. So yeah, that measure's great. In simple terms, we put a budget in, we've smashed it in sales, we've smashed it in profit in year one. And we've got a doubling of profit in year two, and then a kind of another big jump. So this 2020 to 2022 is going to be the record profit ever made by this business in all its time. So we're not only going with a change in culture, but we're going to kind of stand by the fact there's going to be an improvement and a benefit.
But the culture change, the focus on the customer, all impact on sales in a positive way. Now, you're probably doing quite a lot of work around the sales function anyway, but the first two lead to the third one, don't they? And I think you can't separate them, and therefore it's almost like a guaranteed output. If you get the first two right, the third one will come along, and that's great to see. And it genuinely, it's a proud thing to see the figures, but actually the culture and the investing customer bit is the bit that's probably there's more pride there, because that's what led to it, I guess. I've got a couple of things I want to talk about. One is you're part of the Indutrade group, Indutrade UK, and obviously global as well. How much does having a network of other businesses and other MDs help you in driving your own business? I've been lucky enough to work with the Indutrade family in the UK. I've been to various conferences and spoken and hosted things at various conferences. And I always find there's a real energy about them. How do you find it as an MD with fellow MDs? Good best practice sharing? How does it work?
Yeah, I'll give you a strange answer, really, because having somebody who's worked with lots of corporate businesses, you often have this kind of synergies and standardizations and best practice, and sometimes it can really dull down the kind of entrepreneurial spirits. Now with Indutrade, I think they've got the right blend in the sense that they say, it's your business, you run it the way you run it, and we're not going to interfere with that. And in reality, they don't. But we do have regular conferences, cluster groups to look at, sharing suggestions. The biggest thing is probably training, the quality of the people. I mean, I went through 5 interviews to get the job as MD. I mean, it was quite a relentless task, but there was making sure they get the right people. So when we have the conference or the cluster groups, there's a real good interaction. So no, we don't. We get very little direction of how to run the business, but an awful lot of support, training, free training for all employees, which is fantastic. Obviously, we've been on lots of your courses, but giving enough wiggle room to be able to take responsibility and accountability, if you like.
Excellent. Let's come to the title of the podcast. Okay, throw something else at me, why don't you? Now, here we go. Working hard, managing the home life balance, 4 days on the South Coast, long commute on a Sunday and a Thursday. You're transitioning the business culture. You're going through investors in customers, managing a global pandemic, supply chain issues, I'm assuming, product range sort of issues and all that kind of thing. So then what do you decide to do? You decide to have a heart attack. Okay, how does that work then? First of all, I don't think you decided to have one. How's your health, first of all, Derren, today? And secondly, what the hell? Talk us through that.
Yeah, no, I didn't decide to have an heart attack. My health is pretty good now. I had a triple heart bypass at 49 years old back in September. No, in October, 1st of October was the operation. So I'm 3.5, 4 months in.
Yeah.
Hoping to start playing football soon. So from that point of view, I'm very driven. It appears that when I had the heart attack in September, there was 2 functions that was creating it. Firstly, out of the 3 arteries, 1 was blocked and had been blocked for years.
Right.
So basically saying for many years you've been running on 2 cylinders, but we don't know how long for. But I'm very driven, so I'd be up in the crack of morning all day, driving at night time, staying in hotels, probably over living, probably over socializing. Let's be honest, we all like perhaps a drink when you've arrived at the weekend or whatever. So and the second thing is I suffer from sleep apnea, which means that I'm constantly waking up in the middle of the night, which puts a lot of stress and strain on your heart. So actually now my heart's fixed with a triple bypass. I'm on a sleep apnea mask. That means I don't stop breathing overnight, and I've got lots more energy, and I've stopped snoring, which means that I've probably saved my marriage as well. So it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned.
Win-win. So that's good to know. But how did that mortality thing? Because you got a warning, and you should, I guess, take that as a lucky sign that you got a warning. Some people sadly don't get the warning, do they? How did that affect you personally and professionally, and how did the team step up in that sort of time scale? Because it's very worrying across the board: family, friends, colleagues, business. How did that transpire, really?
I'd like to say I'd completely changed my life and my outlook on life, Nick, but I haven't, and I don't think I ever will. I'd rather be living my life than being alive and not living my life. So I've made some adjustments, but I'm not going to slow down very much. As far as the team, they've been absolutely phenomenal. I have a great commitment. The night before I had the operation, where I was told I had a 1 in 50 chance of dying, I did an email will, because I've not had a will. I had a drip in my arm. I had a bandage on my right wrist looking like Keith Lemon. And I did my monthly brief for the employees because I didn't want to let them down. And that was the night before the surgery and there afterwards. But I've got to say, they protected me very much. I did post-surgery, check with them and do stuff, but they've really stepped up. It was noted by the business that things had plateaued as far as the rate of improvement, but not gone down. And actually, ironically, we have every month ABCD Awards, which is going above and beyond the call of duty. 3 people, gold, silver, and bronze, are nominated by employees and then voted on by a cross company panel. So it's not management; this is the cross company. And in January, I'm very pleased to say I was nominated and awarded the gold ABCD award for commitment to the business during those difficult times. Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't have accepted it because I go above and beyond, but I think if I can't accept it post heart attack, I never would.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a great place to be, and you feel fit. I mean, you're saying you're not going to change your lifestyle. They've changed it for you by sticking stents and sorting your heart out for you, mate. So
Yeah.
I think in some respects, you know, you've got a bit of new lease anyway, haven't you? So so that's good. Take it easy when you're playing football, though. 49, mate. It's not good. You're probably more likely to tear some muscles now, aren't you, than do other internal damage. What I've got to ask the question: what are you, 6-a-side, 5-a-side? Tell me you're not 11-a-side at 49.
No. I've not been 11-a-side for a long time. Just 6-a-side. We've actually set up a Verplas football team, which is great. So it's another great bonding experience, to be honest with the team.
Good stuff. Did you learn anything about your leadership and management approach? I mean, you were a year into the role. You'd had the benefit of building some of your team around you, doing the culture change and that kind of stuff. So it wasn't like very, very early in your role at Verplas. 12 months in, was your leadership management stuff that you'd done in the 12 months up to your heart attack, did that have an impact on the performance of the business whilst you were, you know, out of action, as it were, do you think?
Well, my leadership style is always to appoint good people, support them, coach them, promote them, and let them do the job. So ironically, although I was less available post-surgery, they're still allowed to do the job. I mean, my favorite saying is, why employ good people and tell them what to do? There's just no point in doing that. So I think from that point of view, they had more freedom to expand and to grow, and they really did come on, and that was fantastic. But I think they was probably starting to get to the point where they needed a bit more guidance, especially around culture and other things. So, you know, when I got back in the business, or that I spoke to them, you know, it was like, this is great stuff. What next? So but as far as changing my leadership style, no, I don't think I have really.
Okay. I'm probably going to butcher this phrase, but it's, if you employ people and tell them what to do, you get workers. If you employ people and trust them to do the right thing, you get leaders. That's probably butchered, but it's a version of that. I think, and I think that's probably where you are. You've got a set of, you know, leaders and managers who are up for the task and up for the job, aren't you, really? And you know, it is a journey for them. They're not necessarily always be ready on day one, but it's good to see that the business didn't cave whilst your leadership was on a hospital bed and a recovery bed. So I'm glad to see you back to your full health as well, Derren. So that's good to see. So as we come out, I've got written down here, as we come out of the pandemic, brackets, fingers crossed, because I don't want to touching wood. How much of what you've been through as a business, and, you know, things like the challenges, we didn't really touch on the challenges of supply chain, and, you know, I guess the Suez Canal got blamed for a lot of stuff, didn't it? All the sort of container stuff. How much of what you do now is different to what it was pre-pandemic and will stay because it's good practice? You know, have you shifted the business to ways of operating and doing things that you wouldn't have even dreamed of pre-pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, we've done the business and probably the country and maybe the world it's changed so much in the last 18 months, 2 years. And as much as I think we'll all hope in 2022 was going to be a year of stability, I'm not convinced. And although we've, you know, the things like Zoom and Teams that we would have thought was not possible before is clearly very, very possible now, including customer visits. So that's lots of change. I mean, we've done lots of change to improve our service and quality and perception to the customer, or our quality of communication, because unfortunately we're putting price increases through. We don't want to put price increases through, and I'm not a subscriber that says charge a customer more, but you don't, you know, give them a poor service. So I think the problem we're in at the moment, like many businesses, with raw material supply and the issues around that, sometimes the service has got a little bit worse. I would say if we did the IOC survey now, we may have gone backwards a little bit. We've had price increases of 110%, We went with the 3 price increases last year, and already this year, and we're only a month into this year, I'm seeing price increases coming again. And I think, you know, we genuinely only pass on the increases to the customers, but it becomes almost a never-ending scenario for all of us, passing it down the line. So yeah, still lots of challenges, and H2 of 2022 might be a little bit easier, but fingers crossed.
Are your customers more accepting of the fact that it's not Verplas, as in, you know, you'd have to live in a cave to not know what's going on in the wider world? But, you know, some customers still, in my experience with other clients of mine, you know, they still say, well, I demand and expect this, you know, even though what they're asking for is ridiculous and unrealistic. Are your customers a little bit more in tune with the global situation?
The customers are absolutely in tune with what's happening, and they have a lot of sympathy for what we're going through. But obviously, it's painful to keep going with price increases, price changes, and although they'll obviously use the manufacturers increase the price, there is a, you know, a pain of doing that. And I think a lot of products that come from Europe seem to be the ones that say take it or leave it. It's 60% increase tomorrow, and if you don't want to buy it, we'll sell it to somebody else. So you've got this fait accompli straight away, and then you go to your customer and say, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to dilute the price and increase it. So I think it's just that relentless battle that we could just do with some stability, really.
Do you feel at some point you'll get back to, I mean, it's really about supply and demand, isn't it, at the moment, and raw materials, and the raw material costs have gone up simply because of lack of raw materials. If raw material availability became better in the second half of the year, do you think that would have a better impact on prices? Or do you think it's like the gas and oil industry, where the barrel goes up and it's at the pumps tomorrow, it comes down, and 6 months later they knock a penny off? You know, is it going to be that, or do you think there's going to be some global, if you like, leveling out of you know, expectations, supply chain, or is it just a reality of getting through the year this year?
I think in time the cycle will complete, and a lot of this will reverse. And you know, when supply starts to increase again, of course, supply and demand is going to mean that prices are going to start to come down. I've seen quite a lot of questionable supply issues in Europe. So some of the big companies like BASF, who supply resin to most of the world, they've got, you know, 5 plants, and one plant, you know, is down for maintenance, and then surprisingly enough, another plant goes down when that one comes up. So I think there is a little bit of you know, ensuring demand and, you know, is still being higher than supply. But I think at some stage it will undo. I mean, we've tried to use surcharges as a mechanism to say it will go up and it will come down again. But it gives, you know, the feedback from the IAC survey was that customers didn't like the certainty. They'd rather have the price increase now, deal with that, and then if we have a price decrease in the future, we'll deal with that. But I don't see 2022 as about any price decreases. I think I think it's still going to be more price increases. I think probably 2023 is going to be stabilization, and by 2024 the world might be getting back to some form of normality, whatever normal is, and I think the prices will start to come down again then.
It's been a long old slog, hasn't it? You know, it genuinely has. And as I say, the title of the podcast is, okay, throw something else at me, why don't you? You know, so if we throw in there supply chain, we throw in there culture change, we throw in there understanding that you were in a business that was minus 60, invested in customers, and then the heart attack. You've had quite a journey, haven't you, really? So I guess I'm going to ask you the final question, Derren, at this stage is, what's next for you, and what's next for Verplas in your ambitions for both yourself and the business, apart from getting back to kicking people on a football pitch very soon?
Well, first it's getting kicked on the football pitch. It's kick the boss. We might as well rename it Kick the Boss, actually. But it's very good. I mean, I guess talking about the business, I mean, we've got a very clear vision, values, and strategy and behaviours. And what the team have done is put together we wills, we won'ts. You know, we won't take the mickey, we won't lie to customers, we won't do this, we will help and support the team. So there's a real understanding of where we're going. We've got a 2-year plan with all the targets, not just financials, employee surveys, employee satisfaction, engagement, lots of really good things to measure as a business. So I think there's a lot of clarity on where we're going as a business. We're getting good investment from Indutrade, lots of training. So I think the business is in good shape and there's a high level of confidence moving forward. I think that as far as next for Derren Gittins, I think really is keep growing the team, driving the culture, trying to get the momentum with the culture. Because I think we had a really good start and it did drop off a little bit. You know, if the person at the top is not fully behind culture change, it will always fall over. It can't just be the senior team. It can't just be pockets of people. But no, leading from the front, probably not slowing down as much as I should do, but I'll try and keep an eye on my blood pressure and my medicine, etc. And changing people's life that's all I'm interested about now, is genuinely improving people's life. And when people knock on my door, genuinely saying thanks very much, you know, I had somebody leave the business the other day, gone to work for BMW, and said that without the confidence that they've been given and the culture change and the skills and the training, they would have never felt they were good enough to go and work for BMW. And they've gone delighted, absolutely delighted.
It's a sort of a parent-child, this flake, you know, they leave the nest pride moment, isn't it? Really, you know, you're losing someone, but you're losing someone based on the impact that you've made on them, and you can't keep everybody forever, and that's great to see. Listen, this has been an absolute brilliant lesson in leadership and, you know, culture and getting the best out of the business. And it's fair to say Verplas is in brilliant hands, Derren, going forward. So I think you've been a fabulous guest. You've shared some really interesting sort of insights for our audience. On that subject, those who are watching this on YouTube, you'll see the slide which tells you, you know, where else you can have a look at the whole podcast series. The Impact Sessions is available on impactus-group.com. That'll take you to all the links to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, whichever your popular podcast platform that you prefer. I've also put Derren's contact details on the final slide, but they'll also be in the show notes on whichever platform that you use. So if you want to engage with Derren, you want to talk to him, or you want to buy any extruded products for the sectors that he services and his team service, I'm sure he'd take a call. So Derren, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being a fantastic guest, and I wish you luck on your health side of things. I wish you luck on the football pitch, and above all, I wish you luck with your team at Verplas going forward.
Thanks, Nick.